Hello everybody. So I know how much you all love hearing stories of very entitled people. So the majority of this video is actually just going to be taken up by the question of the day. We'll get to that soon, but let's start with, my entitled aunt comes to my workplace to ridiculize my nerd collection because I wouldn't let her 3-year-old play with it. So a bit of context, I'm a 28, female, pediatric resident, and my aunt is 34 and a head nurse in a special needs retirement home. We pretty much grew up as siblings until I began med school and she started a family and became an entitled mom. Since my grandmother, and her mother, is basically self-sufficient, my mom fills the grandmotherly duties towards her 3-year-old, mostly random sessions of babysitting. Now, I've always been nerdy, and over the years I got all kinds of merchandising and memorabilia, some very expensive or out of stock. They stay in my childhood room, since I'm living in a small flat and it is not a permanent residence. My mom doesn't mind, she always has been very respectful of my stuff and understands that they're not toys, and so does the 3-year-old kid. So when the entitled mom goes, "See that robot? Go play with the nice robot." My mom goes, "F no," and the kid starts with, "Mom, they're not toys." The entitled mom calls me, even though it was working hours, puts me on speakerphone, and the conversation, "Hey, tell the kid it's okay to play with the robot." I say, "What robot?" My mom says, "Mazinga." I say, "Absolutely no." The kid says, "See, Mom, I told you." She sounds angry and closes the call. Flash forward to 2 days ago. She comes to the hospital to see me, talks to the director of the residency, asks if she can tag along since she's the head nurse at her workplace. Okay. I introduce her to colleagues in the break room, and she starts telling everyone how I didn't let her kid play with my childhood toys, and even making her son too scared of me to touch them. We're talking a room full of pediatric doctors. Before I completely die, I manage to explain that it's a €200 Daltanius action figure. There's this deep embarrassing moment while she actually laughed at me, before the director takes out his phone and shows us a picture of a shelf full of WOW's action figures. My kids can't touch them, I buy their own. Entitled mom takes it in strides with a, "When are you buying kid the robot?" I say, no, when are you buying kid his own? At that point she got angry but quiet. Later she screamed at me, and I painted her like someone who can't buy her kid expensive toys in front of rich doctors. I admit my comeback was an, "Are you serious?" on a loop. Now my mother locks my old room when the kids are over, especially if my entitled mom could appear. And I'm almost more angry about that than the fact that she tried to ridiculize me. I don't think ridiculize is a word. The kid loved walking in the room, and he knew which toys he could use, but he could still stare at my models and action figures, and he was very respectful. But my mom doesn't want to take any chances until things smooth over. How in the world is a 3-year-old that's being raised by an entitled mom act more mature than their 34-year-old mother? But hey, I think there's a little bit of nerd in all of us. Yeah, I'm not a nerd here. Don't pay attention to my video games and my stuff behind me. Don't stand next to you on a crowded train? Okay. So this malicious compliance just happened. I live in London, where the underground is pretty busy during rush hour, but especially so today because the train that was due had been held at a previous station. So by the time it reached the station I was in, it was sardines in every carriage. I stepped into a carriage near the door and stood next to a guy who was standing by the door. At least 2 layers of people pushed in past me, such that I didn't even have to hold on to anything, apart from my backpack, which I removed and held in front of me by its straps, because people who don't remove their backpacks on a crowded train are the absolute worst. However, due to being squeezed so tightly, my elbows kept being pushed lightly into the guy's side every time the train braked, and I had nowhere to move because we were all crammed in so tightly. Before I looked at him and apologized, he rudely shoved his arm really hard away from him. The train braked again, and he repeated his shoving, so the conversation went like this. I say, "Can you please not do that? Will you keep elbowing me on the side?" I say, "I don't intend to, but I'm holding my bag and I'm being pushed. Where do you expect me to move?" "Well, every time you elbow me, I'm going to shove you away. Don't stand next to me if you don't want this to happen." I say, "Do you honestly think that I want to stand next to you? We're all trying to take this train somewhere. It's not just you. We're all being squeezed and crushed here." He just rolls his eyes. So I decided to comply with his request to not stand next to him. At the next stop, I shifted and made space to allow any new incoming passengers to stand next to him. A big guy with a duffel bag took my place and stood next to him, and I could see the guy being bumped and elbowed again. I caught his eye and he glared at me, and I smiled back sweetly at him. The next stop was a woman with a boxy handbag with sharp corners. Even better. For every next 7 stops, I made sure to subtly move such that any newcomer would stand next to him, and he never got a moment without being shoved by more and more passengers and their luggage and limbs. And I kept smiling at him every time he looked at me, and he kept glaring at me for complying with his request. You know, a packed subway seems like a great place to have a mosh pit. That'd be so cool if there was just like a concert on a train, and everyone's like trying to dance and mosh like while the whole thing is moving. That'd just make things so much more interesting, you know? Well, we only had 2 stories today because we've got a lot of responses for the question, what's the worst case you've seen of someone trying to play the victim when it was all their own fault? I was in a crowded parking lot, driving around looking for a space. There was one car ahead of me. The car ahead of me stopped, so I stopped as well. I'm not sure why she stopped, because there was no empty spaces and no one was pulling out, but whatever. Then, before I had time to react, her reverse lights came on and she came flying backwards towards me. I didn't even have time to honk. She slammed into the front of my car, got out of her car, and started screaming that I hit her. When the officers arrived, she was crying and shaking and complaining that her neck hurt, and cursing me for slamming into the back of her car. Thankfully, 2 people had been walking through the parking lot when this occurred and told the officer what really happened. Later, the driver of the car that hit me tried to tell our insurance company that I knew the witnesses, and that's why they lied. I didn't know the witnesses, by the way. At any rate, if the witnesses hadn't stuck around to give statements, I'd have been screwed. I hope you guys like entitlement stories, cause we got lots of them. A woman rear-ended my car in a car wash of all places. She failed to put her car in neutral and rolled right into me. She then proceeded to yell at me and insist that it was my fault for not going fast enough. After we finally convinced her that the track always goes the same speed, she decided to blame the car wash employee for making the track too slow. I mean, out of all the places you might want to be racing your car, a car wash is probably on like the top 5 worst places to race. My friend's sister, she doesn't feed her kids nor send the oldest one, 7, to school. Her neighbors reported her to CPS, and now she's posting statuses about how cruel people are for separating a mother and her kids. Man, this is just like the kind of people who commit a crime, end up in prison, and then blame the prison for ruining their life. An older lady walked into a construction area where she knew she wasn't supposed to go, just to snoop around when the workers weren't there, and then sued because she slipped on a plastic floor covering. She worked there, she knew the area was off limits, and did it anyway. I mean, I know that lawsuits can get pretty ridiculous, but I thought that like if you had warning signs up saying not to go somewhere, that you wouldn't be responsible if somebody got hurt there. An employee was being fired for a multitude of infractions at a coffee shop. He had been caught by management calling customers things like dumb A and stupid F under his breath, and several customers had also reported the behavior. He was constantly late or would leave early or beg others to cover his shift. Instead of restocking or cleaning the area during his downtimes, he would take out his dumb sticks and practice, which annoyed the other employees and the customers. During inventory counts, we noticed the whole pallets of sandwiches or baked goods were missing, as well as bottled drinks, etc. We were mysteriously out of the huge 5-pound bag of espresso roast. The numbers were not adding up. He was subsequently fired after being caught bad-mouthing a customer, while a visiting manager was also in the cafe. The guy didn't know it. The guy blamed all the issues on everyone else. Late to work turned into, I missed the bus, or my roommate forgot to wake me up in time. Leaving early turned into, well, I got a call for a gig, or there was a concert I wanted to see. Food missing turned into, I didn't have the money to eat, and it's the company's responsibility to ensure that I'm fed while on the clock. Calling customers names turned into, they misunderstood me. Management said, what part of calling a customer a dumb F is misunderstanding? Followed by, not my fault they're so sensitive. All this dude's problems were blamed on everyone else, and all his issues and situation in life was blamed on everyone else. Us employees stopped inviting him out because at bars he would order drinks and tell the bartender one of us was covering, and skip out or leave rapidly before the check was presented to us. He would also walk around tables where people got up to dance or talk in a group, and guzzle down their drinks. He was an all-over crappy person. Found out after he was fired from our store that he was hired by a Starbucks in the mall, who failed to call for a reference or check even though our store was listed as a previous place of employment. He was caught stealing money and food from there too. Man, how do people like this get anywhere in life? I honestly think it's crazy how much some employers will put up with crap like this. One time I worked at a gym where people could just come and pay up front for like one day if they wanted to, so like we had a cashier and everything. At one point I was just like, so how come that one girl never is up front at the cashier? And it's like, well, we think she was stealing money out of it. And I'm just like, what? And you just continue letting her work here. I mean, I guess that's just fine. Facebook drama from a few years ago. This girl was leaving a bar drunk, and she backed her car into the car of someone she was an acquaintance with while exiting the parking lot. Then the next day went off on him for telling the police he saw her do it, when he knew she was poor and could have just said he didn't see it and had his insurance pay. She kept digging a deeper hole, and all the replies were like, lady, don't drive drunk. It was glorious. I'm surprised she didn't even try the excuse of, the bartender got me drunk. I quit my job and set up my own competing business with my ex-employer after he failed to pay me for 2 months, claiming non-payment from the clients. He had a massive go at me after I confronted him with the receipts from the clients to show payments, and he accused me of making him look bad in front of his clients, and that he didn't owe me money because some people are bosses and some people are employees. Hence why I quit the job and set up for myself, because the last time I checked, slavery is illegal in the UK. I also warned a few of my ex-coworkers to be careful and not to let him rack up debt with them because of what he did to me. They're nice people with young families and don't deserve to be taken advantage of, like he did to me. I take him to court to try and recoup the money he owed me for the work I completed, and the judge ruled in my favor for the full amount of just over £4,000. He then plays the victim card with everyone he knows, and says that I made him and his family homeless despite the fact that he never paid me a penny of the money he owed. £4,000 is like 5 to 6 months rent in a decent neighborhood in my city. Honestly blows my mind every time I think about it. Man, I can't imagine what it's like working a job that you don't know if you're going to get paid or not. Wait, I do that right now. I lost a lot of weight, 150 pounds. My overweight friend didn't. I don't care, she's my friend, I love her. I tried on a pair of size 12 jeans, but they were too big, so I asked for the smaller size. Before I could try them on, my friend stormed out of the shop, and when I followed her, she screamed at me for rubbing my weight loss in her face. I lost the weight in 2015. I've been this size for 4 years. You know, there is sort of a simple solution to this. If you're so upset about being fat, then you could try fixing that yourself. This guy got upset, saying we were always talking about him behind his back. He would creep up to the door in our apartment and stand there listening to our conversations. Of course we would talk about him. He owed 2 of us over $600 and refused to pay it. And we were the bad people because we would talk about it in our own apartment, not knowing he was creeping around the corner. Yeah, I mean, the best way to have people not talk bad behind your back is to just not give them a reason to. My crazy college girlfriend cheated on me and then blamed me for causing problems in our relationship by being obsessed with the truth, as I figured out what had happened. Obsessed with the truth. Wow, I have not heard that one before. Don't worry that I cheated on you. Like, you don't have to think about it. Just forget that it ever happened. A local business owner / friend asked a lot of his regular customers to invest in his new business in Atlanta by buying shares. I bought in, knowing we wouldn't break even for at least 3 years, but that he could sell religion to the Pope. Had losses for 2 years, breaks even at 3, as predicted. 4 years in, he closes the Atlanta store and opens in another town. But this time, he's doing it all with his own money. BS, he's doing it with the inventory and proceeds from the Atlanta store. Even has a shiny new house, cars, the works for his new adventure. He's shocked to the core and hurt, I tell you. Hurt and disappointed when all the shareholders took him to court. I took your money, I turned it into more money, and then I used that money as my own money to start something else. My sister's friend was beaten up by her boyfriend and stayed the night downstairs of our house with her 3 kids. The next day, he comes around and starts cursing her out and saying that she stole his kids. Grabs the baby and starts walking away with him. She chases him to try and get the baby back, and he punches her several times in the face. My brother intervenes and separated them. This a-hole leaves and brings back the cops to arrest my brother for assault. Wow, it doesn't get much scummier than that. I hope it didn't work out the way he expected it to. My brother, our whole life, has blamed our middle-class upbringing for him taking 0 responsibility. He's basically a 40-year-old version of, no one gets me. He spends his money recklessly, and has turned down opportunities to advance himself in lieu of making YouTube videos in his shed, ranting about how richies keep him down. It's pathetic. You know, I'm a pretty big advocate for personal responsibility. I think it's really good for anybody to be completely self-sufficient, and if you're somebody who just likes to blame the world, or blame society, or blame some political differences on all of your problems, then you should probably take a good look at yourself. I mean, I really wasn't expecting this to turn into like a life lesson video, but here we are. My cat plays with the closet door and sometimes shuts himself in. Then I get an angry cat yowling to get let out and acts like I'm the one that locked him in there. I think there's a cat around here that does something similar. Yeah, she'll never admit to it. Well, I guess we'll just end it there. Hope you guys are having a good week and enjoy the cat video.